Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Strange Pathways. I am your host, Scott Mort. I hope you've had just the best week since we last spoke to each other. I've had a pretty good one. Today, as I'm recording this right now, it's Halloween, and it's my anniversary. I have spent 1 year married to just the most wonderful woman in the world, my wife, Ariana. Ariana and I, we've known each other for many, many years. But we only dated from around February of 2020 until October of 2020. We got married quite on the fly. She's not from this country. She's from the Bahamas. And the more that I learn about the Bahamas, the more that I'm quickly going native, even though we are situated here in Pennsylvania. Just as an example, we spent our anniversary, not today, but last week, we spent in the beautiful Grand Midway Hotel, a haunted hotel attraction here in Pennsylvania. And today, it was just a nice, quiet day. We grabbed a little dinner. We went to a cemetery. We love just relaxing in cemeteries. It's very, very quiet. We had dinner in a local cemetery, and really that was about it. I hope that everyone out there finds a person like that to spend their lives with. Every day is like the day with your best friend. Our first tale takes us all the way back to May of 1973. It's around 4 p.m. in the afternoon, and two children, a boy and a girl, are at Lake Common, Sandown, in the Isle of Wight, in the UK. They're walking around a golf course, and they hear this noise. It sounds an awful lot like an ambulance siren. It wails up high and then down low. And up high, down low again. They follow the sound across the golf course, and they get to a hedge that leads into a swampy field very close to the Sandown airport. But whenever they get through this hedge, the noise stops. Now, two kids, that's not going to stop them. They're looking around. They cross a footbridge over a stream, and they see a blue-gloved hand appear below them, underneath the footbridge. And this strange humanoid appears. He's holding a book that he had dropped into the shallow water, and he was retrieving it. Then this creature, this humanoid, this whatever it is, walks a few yards away, and he's using this strange little hopping motion. And he enters this metal hut. The kids said it was really close to those used in construction sites, but it didn't have any windows. The children have enough of this. They decide that they're going to leave. And then about 150 feet away, this thing appears again. And this time, it's holding what kind of looks like a microphone. The siren starts again. The children now are very, very scared. But then the sound stops. And this thing speaks into the microphone. The children said it sounded like it was right next to them. A voice saying, "Are you still here?" And it sounds very friendly. It sounds extremely friendly. And the children kind of look at each other and they go, "Okay, well, let's see how this plays out." And they walk over to him. They get their first real good look at this thing. And really, what do you call this? Let me describe this to you. It's about 6 feet tall, no neck, only a head and shoulders. This thing is wearing a yellow pointed hat. And the hat, it's kind of locked in with a red collar and a green tunic. On the top of the hat is a black knob. And then on both sides, he has wood antennas. His face has triangles for eyes, a brown square for a nose, yellow lips that do not move, a white face, circular markings on his cheek, and a fringe of red hair that falls across his forehead. Instead of arms and legs, he has wooden slats, just like boards of wood that kind of stick out from his sleeves and the legs of his white trousers. So what is this? This is what I refer to as a one-off. It's definitely not a Bigfoot. It's not really an alien. It's not a ghost. It is one of its own kind. Think like, at the time, Point Pleasant Mothman was kind of a one-off. The Flatwoods Monster of West Virginia, that's kind of a one-off. Every once in a while, you get something that's so odd, so strange, that it just doesn't fit into that folder. Psychologists call them schemas. That you can't really understand what you're seeing because you've never seen it before. So what do you call this? This thing picks up a notebook he has and writes, "Hello, and I am all callers Sam." But he doesn't write them in order. So he kind of points to each of the words. And then the children are noticing they can kind of hear without the microphone. His mouth isn't moving. His speech isn't clear. But they can hear him. The boy and the girl, they start to feel a little bit more comfortable. And they ask him questions. They asked him about his clothes, because these clothes were not in good order. They have rips and tears in them. And he tells them they're the only clothes he can wear. Now they go, and this is a good question. Are you human? And this Sam goes, no. Just kind of giggles a little bit and goes, no. Then they ask him, are you a ghost? He says, well, not really, but I am in an odd sort of way. To that they ask him, what are you then? And this thing goes, you know. That's it. That's all he says. You know. He says that that he has no name, that there are others like him. And then he says something really interesting. He says that he's afraid of people. Like, we shouldn't be afraid of him. He's afraid of us. He says that he was afraid that people were going to hurt him because if he was attacked, he wasn't going to fight back. He then invites them into his home, this little hut. Sam and the children crawl into the hut through a flap, and this hut is divided into 2 levels. The first floor, the lower level, has a blue-green wallpaper and covered with a pattern of dials. It has an electric heater, some basic wooden furniture. And the upper level, it has a metallic floor. It's not as big. He tells them, Sam tells them that he feeds on berries that he collects in the late afternoon. And he drinks water from the nearby river, but only once he's cleaned it. He gets a little bit more comfortable in his home, and Sam takes off his hat, and he has a pair of round white ears and just kind of like balding, sparse brown hair. Then Sam shows the children how he eats. Sam takes one of the berries. He places the berry in his ear, and then he kind of jerks his head forward. The berry disappears into his ear, and it reappears in one of his eyes, these little triangular eyes. He does this movement a few more times, like it's kind of like rattling around in a maze inside of his head, and the berry ends up reaching his mouth. At this point, the children notice another feature. The wooden slats kind of end in fingers and toes, but he only has 3 fingers, and he only has 3 toes. These kids, they talk to Sam for about half an hour. They say goodbye, and as kids are going to do, they run out and tell the first person they see that they saw a ghost. Of course, the adult, oh, you kids. Imagination. I mean, whenever I was a kid, I told some whoppers in my time. But a few weeks later, the girl tells her dad about this. He doesn't really give it too much, but then he starts to go, man, she's got a lot of detail to this. So he goes and talks to the boy, and the boy's hitting all the same parts. He's got the same details. He takes them back, and he finds nothing. He talks to 2 workmen who were nearby. They saw nothing. You know, and here's the thing. Kudos to the dad for going out and looking. My dad was that way. Little side story. One day I was walking through a field and I saw this huge circle that had a V-like indentation on one side in the ground. And it was more along the lines of like, it wasn't an indentation in the ground. I shouldn't say that. It was that the grass was growing greener in this weird circle with like a minuscule pie slice taken out of it. I kind of got freaked out, quite honestly. I'm only 8 years old. These kids were much braver than I was whenever I was a kid. But I went and told my dad, I think I found a spot where a UFO landed. And to his credit, my dad immediately picks up his jacket and goes, Scott, go show me. I take him to the field, and he looks and he goes, you know what? I wouldn't know what this is if I hadn't seen what happened. And he like kind of puts his hand on my shoulder, and he says, Scott, I was watching them collect hay out of this field a few weeks ago. And they were doing circular patterns. And whenever they got to this tight part, they kind of kicked up the dirt a little bit. So the grass is growing back a little bit darker where this dirt was kicked up. And I saw them like bring a plow down. And that's where this V shape is. It's one of my favorite memories about my father, really. It's just because you can explain it doesn't mean it's cool. Dare I say, it kind of makes it a little bit cooler knowing the answer. Maybe that's just me, though. One thing that Sam said kind of hits me. Whenever the children asked what he was, he did say, you know. And that goes back to my theory that we create our subconscious, our own mental powers create a lot of the unexplained phenomena that we see. Whenever Sam says, you know what I am, I think what Sam is actually telling them is, your subconscious made me. You have willed me into existence. I mean, that would make him not human. Are you a ghost? Not really. That fits there. You know. You know what I am. Because you have made me. Our next tale takes us back to 1934. The place, Mayagüez, Puerto Rico. In the morning, a young man named Juan Rivera Feliberti is flying a kite in a field just outside of his town. And you know what? I haven't flown a kite in years. I don't even know if I could still do it. But Juan suddenly feels something pulling on this kite. Something's not kind of letting him draw it back in. He follows the string all the way up, and now he sees a silver sphere that's about 20 feet in diameter, and it's hovering above him. 20 feet. 20 feet in diameter. This is something that always fascinates me about UFOs. That's not very big. That's not a lot of room for living quarters and machinery. Make of that what you will. This silver sphere shoots a beam of light down on him, and Juan floats up and enters the sphere through an opening on its top. It's kind of like he's pulled up, over, above, and then down. So it's not just like a pull. He's manipulated. Inside, he sees a man wearing a tight-fitting dark green outfit, and he's kind of at a control panel. This control panel has a shiny crystal. Kind of looks a little bit like an emerald. Next to him is a blonde girl with rosy skin wearing a silver outfit. This girl, she looks really, really young. Juan said 6, 7, somewhere around there. And she's holding his kite. Juan's taken to another room by the girl. And she kind of like, oh, you have this toy? I have this toy. This is my box, and like it shows me images of stuff. Juan wants his kite back, but she's not giving it back. And then the little girl shows him a little box full of collared buttons and goes, do you want to play with it? The girl pressed a couple of buttons on the box. There was a cloud of smoke that spirals around, and then the smoke takes the form of this little monkey creature. And soon there are several monkeys that come out of the box. And you know what this kind of reminds me of? Not to be weird or anything, this kind of reminds me of the Meeseeks box from Rick and Morty. You know, you press it, and then there's your Meeseeks. The little girl then asks Juan, hey, you want the box? I want the kite. I'll give you the box for the kite. Yeah, I mean, that's a really good trade. I'll take a Meeseeks box for a kite. So they put him back down, but they don't do it gently. They kind of just drop him, and he twists his ankle. Now, Juan keeps this box for a long time, and he would bring friends over and go, hey, watch this. Click, monkey out of nowhere. Now, grown-ups couldn't see the monkeys. Only children could see the monkeys. Quite honestly, could you imagine? Could you imagine that? My mom hated blinking lights. And whenever I was a kid, I had this toy. It was a transformer called Omega Supreme, and the little light in his head blinked on and off. I still have my Omega Supreme toy. But the light blinked on and off, and it annoyed my mother to no end. Imagine if you could make a toy that was just like made screaming monkeys that only children could see. I bet grown-ups would love it more than the kids. But he can't figure out how to make the monkeys disappear. He can make them, but he can't make them vanish again. And these monkeys, he can't control them. So later on, he just ends up burying the box on a nearby mountain. Now, Juan himself, he goes, man, I feel like some of these creatures escaped. They're probably still roaming the Puerto Rican bush. But it doesn't end there. In later life, he had a lot of other strange experiences. He said that he encountered alien women who enticed him into lovemaking sessions with him. And he said that like he thought that it was the same girl. He said they almost looked human, but like the breasts were lower down on their body than a human's would be. Whereas like, it's kind of like chest level. This would be like stomach level breasts. Juan also said that during one of his encounters, he receives a message. He was unsure as to what the message meant. But it is kind of frightening. And I've got my own theories on it. The message was, the hour of the new harvest is approaching. The hour of the new harvest. In 1919, over 100 years ago, there was a book on UFOs, what many believe to be the first book on UFOs published, called The Book of the Damned. It was written by an American author, Charles Fort. If you've done any amount of digging into paranormal phenomena, you will hear it referred to often as Fortean phenomena. That's why. Charles Fort. Now you can read this book for free. And I'll put a link to this in the Strange Pathways Facebook page. You can download and read the book for free. You got to remember, this is written, 30 years before Kenneth Arnold first saw what commonly became known as flying saucers. This book deals with all sorts of strange phenomena. The word UFO isn't mentioned because it's written long before the word UFO was even coined. But it's obvious what Charles Fort is talking about is UFOs. He talks about strange rains of organic and inorganic materials from the sky, odd weather patterns, disappearances of people, just tons and tons of strange occurrences. Charles Fort believed, and it is quoted as saying, "The earth is a farm. We are someone else's property." I mean, that goes right back to that new harvest quote, right? There's kind of a thought that keeps me up late at night. You start to look back at like the 1940s, the 1950s, the 1960s, and the type of aliens that seemed to be visiting Earth at that time. I mean, you had green aliens, purple aliens, tall ones. You had stuff like the Flatwoods Monster, which was, 16 feet tall. You had tiny little aliens, just a few inches high. You had multiple armed octopus, bug-eyed men. But then, round about the 70s, round about the 1980s, this cornucopia of different body types, it stops. You no longer have Flatwoods Monsters. You no longer have Hopkinsville Goblins. You have the Greys. What if Charles Fort was right? What if the Earth is a farm? Now, this may be a ridiculous idea, but what if the 1940s, the 50s, the 60s, what if this planet was for sale? What if somebody put the farm up for sale? You get all these prospective buyers coming and looking at the place. What can we use this for? What can we do with this? And then one day, they find a buyer. The Greys. And the abductions start. I mean, they can do that to us after all. We're bought and paid for. We are their property. Thank you for joining us again this week on Strange Pathways. Please head on over to the Facebook page. There are going to be links and photos about today's cases. While you're at it, go over to our YouTube channel. Hit like, comment, subscribe. If you feel like it. Hey, you know you have a friend that's going to love this show. Tell them about it. Tell your friends about this. Because word of mouth is how we're going to make this thing grow. If you'd like to contact me, you can do so at strangepathwaysmail@gmail.com. Thank you once again for joining me this week. Take care of yourselves and each other.